11 Sinister True Trucker Tales from Mexico's Haunted Highways discover the hidden terrors. Jake had heard the whispers since he was a kid. They flowed through the truck stops like summer wind, tales of ghostly hitchhikers and phantom roadblocks on Mexico's highways. As he navigated those winding blacktop veins, each mile felt heavier than the last, pulling him deeper into a world where reality mingled with shadow. This time, however, Jake wasn't ready for the horrors that awaited him. In the dim light of a fading dusk, the highway stretched endlessly under a creeping fog. It pressed against the truck's windows, painting everything in ghostly hues. An unsettling feeling gnawed at him, as if he were not alone. It was a bone-deep chill that whispered warnings, echoing the tales of the lost souls who wandered these roads. He could almost hear them, their sighs creeping into his cabin, weaving through the engine's roar. But safety was just a few more miles ahead, he told himself. He just needed to return home to Pine Ridge, where the mundane heartbeats of family offered warmth against the spine-chilling uncertainty of life on the road. Yet, the routine of arrival was becoming increasingly overshadowed by dread. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. That insightful call echoed far too late in Jake's ears. No sooner had he crossed into unfamiliar territory when a message blinked on his phone, the chill of dread solidifying into true terror. I see your family, they are not safe. Each word slithered into his mind like cold steel. Who could know what he held dear? Details unfurling slowly. A mention of camping spots and local diners turned his stomach in knots. Then there were the notes, each crumpled missive bearing the name Mr. Thompson, the beloved former sheriff, twisted into an echo of nostalgia mixed with malice. As if the charming tales of old were rewritten into dark fables by men who had walked these roads before. Something about him began to feel sinister, and the mounting tension was suffocating. Jake's heart raced each time he pulled onto familiar streets, his kids' laughter now laced with worry. They whispered about the truck stop bandit, a creeping shadow discussed by worried neighbors. They didn't know that shadows came alive with each passing vehicle. The streets pulsed with a fear he couldn't dispel. One night, parked at a dilapidated truck stop, shrouded in fog thicker than sin, he felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. A figure emerged, an unsettling specter, a phantom of a trucker leaning against his rig. "You've come for the truth," it murmured, voice echoing the lost voices of the night. Panic coursed through Jake as he realized this wasn't just a tale, this was a warning. As his heart thundered like runaway freight, he recognized the question that lingered: how much longer could he ignore the horrors unraveling around him? He was staring not just into the shadow, he was standing at the edge of an old cursed legacy entwined with the haunting whispers of Pine Ridge's past. All roads led somewhere, but which would lead him home, and which would lead into darkness? The fog thickened, swallowing him whole. The air hung heavy, thick as molasses, as Jake stared at the specter before him. The trucker's face was a mask of anguish, twisted by pain and desperation. "Listen to me," the ghost pleaded, a tremor beneath the authoritative tone. "You need to leave this place. It demands a price, and it won't stop until it gets what it wants." Jake felt his throat constrict. A price? For what? The figure leaned closer, the fog swirling around him like lost spirits. "Don't be a fool. They're watching, always watching. When you arrive home, your family will be in danger. The bandit isn't just a man, he has something much worse." His gut twisted, each word dragging him deeper into a pit of despair. Mr. Thompson, he knew. He protected people, but look what happened to him. He's one of them now. The stories, they're all true. A chill ran down Jake's spine. He remembered the stories shared in quiet whispers at truck stops, lost souls of the highway, eternally seeking revenge or redemption. Was Thompson's ghost now warning him? Jake took a step back, heart racing, mind spinning. "What do you mean?" he stammered, voice barely a whisper. "Those who travel here become pawns in a dark game. But you can change that. Your family, they're not just targets. They're the key." The ghost pointed a trembling finger toward the open road. "You need to escape. Tonight." Panic bubbled inside Jake. He had to get home, he couldn't leave them, not like this. But the ghost's words wound around his heart like a twisted vine. Doubt gnawed at the edges of his thoughts. What if the ghost was right? What if staying would bring nothing but horror? Just then, the unmistakable roar of an approaching truck broke through the fog. Fear electrified the air around him, and the ghost's expression shifted into urgency. "You must choose. Leave now, or face the darkness that lurks." Jake's instinct screamed for him to flee. He leaped back into his cab, heart pounding against his ribs. As he fumbled with the ignition, a low growl vibrated through the ground, the sound enveloping him. Shadows danced outside, dark shapes moving as though alive, circling. The truck illuminated the road with its headlights, cutting through the fog like a knife. But it wasn't just a passing vehicle, it had slowed, the piercing lights revealing a figure standing in the middle of the road. Jake squinted, dread pooling in his stomach. It was a woman, soaked in shadow, her face hidden behind a veil of darkness. She raised her hand, beckoning him closer, and just like that, his breath escaped him. The ghost's warning echoed violently in his mind. "No. Don't go near her." Jake's instinct kicked in. He slammed the truck into reverse, but it was too late. The lights flickered and then vanished. Darkness enveloped him, swallowing every beam of hope. The truck's engine sputtered, pausing as if the machine itself was gripped by hesitation. Suddenly, the temperature inside the cabin dropped sharply. Breath visible, he felt the stare of unseen eyes. The fog rolled in thick and relentless, curling inside the cab. The ghost's face flickered in his mind, a desperate plea for escape. His heart raced. Just before everything went black, he saw her eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. They pierced through the darkness like hungry flames. "What are you?" he gasped, straining against fear. The shadowy woman's lips curled into a smile that held no warmth, no compassion, only a haunting promise of what was to come. Then everything went silent. Jake was left trembling, the weight of terror thick in the air. Was this the end, or merely a beginning? As he stared into the abyss, a single question lingered: how far was he willing to go to save his family from the lurking darkness? A distant voice echoed in the gloom, whispering one last warning: the night has just begun and it is hungry. The silence was deafening around Jake. It felt oppressive, almost alive, wrapping around him like a suffocating shroud. He clenched the steering wheel, forcing air into his lungs, feeling like he was being watched from every corner of the cabin. The shadowy woman had vanished, leaving only the dense fog swirling restlessly outside. Jake fumbled for the ignition, heart hammering. He could almost hear the soft patter of rain, but had it started to rain? Anxiety clawed at his throat as he turned the key, praying the engine would roar back to life. Instead, it coughed weakly, stuttering like an old man struggling to breathe. Come on," he urged, panic flooding his voice. The ghost's warning reverberated in his mind like a siren. He pictured his wife and kids waiting at home, unaware of the shadows looming around him, waiting to consume him whole. Suddenly, the air shifted. A whisper, soft yet distinctly audible, crawled through the space. "Jake." His pulse quickened. Was he losing his mind? The mist outside thickened, shifting and swirling in patterns that felt almost deliberate. "Leave." The voice drifted through the chilled air, echoing from the shadows encircling him. Jake's skin prickled as adrenaline surged through him, urging escape. He twisted the key again, desperation fueling his every move. The engine sputtered but held back, sending a tremor of frustration down his spine. "What do you want?" He shouted into the darkness, his voice quaking. "Who are you?" Silence. Then there was a rustle, a faint movement outside his truck. Something scraped against the side, sending chills cascading through him. Jake peered into the swirling fog, heart racing. A figure, barely distinguishable, loomed dangerously close. "Please." The voice again, sharper this time. "Help us." With trembling fingers, Jake reached for the door handle, a mix of fear and curiosity surging within him. What lay outside? Was it the woman again? Questions spun through his mind like a cyclone. He had to know that. He opened the door, the chill of the night seeping in. The air was thick with dread, the kind that made every hair on his body stand on end. "Who are you?" he yelled, stepping cautiously into the fog. Then he saw her cloaked in shadow, with eyes that glowed like dying embers. While the fear nearly paralyzed him, a haunting familiarity washed over him. This was no stranger, she looked just like the missing girl from the news. Her hair tangled, her clothes torn, a whisper of blood marring her pale skin. "Help me find him," she breathed, a ghost of a plea. "He is near." Jake's heart sank. Every story he had heard about lost souls, twisted fates, and horrors on the highway stirred his deepest instincts. This was the bandit, the one who hunted the innocents. "Get in the cab," he shouted, turning back toward the truck, but before he could reach the door, a chilling laughter pierced the air, the kind that froze marrow in bones. Something moved behind him. A shadow broke away from the lingering fog, a figure sporting a wide-brimmed hat, its face obscured. The bandit. Jake's instincts kicked and he bolted for the door, slamming it shut just as he heard the ominous footsteps approaching. The engine roared to life in a blaze of triumph, and he hit the gas, tires screaming against the asphalt, but as the wheels spun, he felt the weight of the darkness clawing at them, threatening to drag them down. Glancing in the rearview mirror, Jake's blood froze. In the glow of the headlights, he could see the shadowy figures gathering at the roadside, their eyes flickering like candles in a storm. "Leave this place." The ghost's voice reached him, frantic and urgent. "Don't let them take you." The road stretched endlessly ahead, a ribbon of wavering uncertainty, and terror consumed Jake as he determined he might not escape this cycle. As he drove deeper into the night, something behind him lurked, something hungry for souls. Anxiety gripped him like a vice. What else might they take? Jake pushed the truck harder, desperate for distance. The pounding in his chest matched the rising fear bubbling inside. He knew that whatever was hunting him was far from finished. The glow from the dashboard flickered ominously, and then something dark and hungry slithered across his vision. What did the shadows want from him? Were they truly ready to take everything he held dear? With every ounce of resolve, he whispered into the night, "I will not let you win." But as his resolve hardened, a voice laughed from behind him, a cold, cruel sound that sang of inevitable doom. "What will you sacrifice to keep them safe?" The question hung in the air, heavy and dark, leaving him in a pit of despair. Jake scrambled for answers as fear washed over him like a wave. Would he be forced to pay the ultimate price? But more importantly, would he get to a point of no return? The road twisted through the fog, serpentine and treacherous. Jake's mind raced as fast as the truck, the questions spiraling out of control. What did that voice mean? What choice would he have to make? The shadows in the rearview mirror were relentless, stretching and distorting as if they were reaching for him. A flicker of movement caught his eye, and he shot another glance back. They were closer now, solid figures among the wisps of fog, their mouths twisting into grotesque, mocking grins. Jake gritted his teeth, slamming on the gas, urging the truck to push forward. "Come on!" He screamed at the vehicle as if it could hear him. He could almost hear the laughter echoing in his head, pulling him deeper into despair. "Don't look back." The ghostly girl's voice crawled into his mind. Her gaze still haunted him. What if she was right? What if the only way out was to outrun the darkness? The headlights illuminated a road sign, barely visible through the haze, 20 miles to Barren Creek. Barren Creek. Names like that sent shivers down his spine. He recalled stories bikers had gone missing there, strange lights flickering in the sky above. The outlaw bandit was supposed to haunt those roads too. With dread pooling in his stomach, Jake swerved, taking a sharp left onto a gravel side road. It was his last desperate chance. He knew he needed to get as far away from whatever lurked behind him. But as soon as he turned, the truck shuddered, rattling as the tires crunched into the loose stones, the sound almost swallowed by the encompassing fog. The landscape shifted, the trees on either side of the road closing in like sentinels bearing witness to his descent into darkness. The headlights caught glimpses of twisted branches, forming claw-like shapes, reaching, grasping. He felt eyes watching him, judging him. Panic surged again, suffocating and heavy. "Please, God," Jake murmured, gripping the wheel tighter, knuckles drained of color. The defenseless sensation surged back in, like being hunted. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was a mistake. A roar echoed behind him, shattering the quiet of the fog, drowning out the sound of his own heartbeat. The figures were coming for him, outrunning the shadows. He pressed his foot down harder. His truck was an old beast, struggling against the onslaught of fear. Then he saw something in the distance. A flicker of light, breaking through the murk like a beacon in the night. Jake squinted, hope igniting for the first time since this wretched journey began. A cabin emerged from the mist, dimly lit but solid, a refuge. But just as hope began to bloom, the cruel laughter bellowed again, echoing through the ravenous night. "Do you know what you'll find there?" Jake's throat felt dry as he fought the urge to scream. He couldn't answer the darkness, he couldn't give it the satisfaction. Instead, he pressed on, inching closer to the light, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm. As he approached, the figures behind him started to distort, blending into the shadows, their forms flickering like dying flames. Relief began to wash over him when suddenly, the headlights flickered, dimming as the truck sputtered. "No, no, no." Jake swallowed hard, pumping the gas, praying it would respond. The light of the cabin grew larger, but the engine continued to choke, sputtering its final breaths. "Help us," a ghostly choir whispered, drowning out his own thoughts. Jake's gaze darted from the cabin to the shadows closing in behind him. The edges of his vision darkened as he realized he might not make it before it all ended. He gripped the wheel tighter, shouting, "I want to let you take me." But just as he reached the cabin door, silence fell, heavy and thick. The laughter faded, replaced by a shuddering whisper against his ear. The air was cold and stale around him. An ominous laugh rose again from the shadows, directly behind him. "What will you give up to save them?" Desperation clawed at him as he felt the darkness pulling tighter. He had no idea what was waiting in the cabin or what price he might have to pay, with his heart in his throat. Jake faced the door. Was this sanctuary? Or a final trap? The night's grip tightened, time was running out. Would he dare to step inside, or would the shadows claim him first? Jake's hand trembled as he reached for the cabin door. It felt like ice beneath his palm, its wooden surface worn and splintered, as if it had stood witness to countless horrors. He hesitated. The darkness behind him seemed to breathe, a predator waiting for the slightest misstep. "Just step inside," whispered the soft, raspy voice that echoed through his mind. Yet the phantom was not just a voice. He could see her pale figure framed by the fog, eyes wide and pleading. "Help us." "No." He barked, forcing himself to turn away, pushing the thoughts aside even as his heart raced. He flung the door open and rushed inside, the hinges creaking ominously, a warning or perhaps an invitation. The cabin was dim and cramped, lit only by a flickering candle on a small table. Shadows danced across the walls, writhing like restless spirits. Dust motes floated lazily in the light, momentarily distracting him from the chilling pull of darkness pressing against the door behind him. He closed the door and leaned against it, chest heaving. The silence was heavy, too heavy. Had he escaped, or merely delayed the inevitable? He took a breath, forcing himself to look around. Everything inside felt ancient. Mismatched furniture was scattered haphazardly, as if no one had cared for years. A moldy rug lay half unraveled beneath his boots. There was an overwhelming scent of decay, the air stale and thick with unease. The ghostly choir of whispers again seeped into his consciousness, "Help us." But now, he could almost hear it nearer, not just in his head but from the corners of the cabin, wrapping around him like a shroud. In the far corner, a dusty mirror caught his eye, its surface fogged like the world outside. He moved closer, compelled to gaze into its depths. Fragmented reflections danced across the glass, but Jake's own image was missing. In its place, he saw faces twisted, desperate faces, mouths agape in silent screams. They reached out, their hands pressing against the other side, fingers leaving trails of shadow in the glass. "Get out!" he shouted, his voice cracking, slamming his fist onto the mirror's frame. The faces disappeared, swallowed by a billowing darkness that rolled through the room like smoke. And then he heard it, the shuffling sound of footsteps, tiny, hesitant, yet moving closer. "Help us!" The voice was softer now, almost human, but something about it twisted his gut. The cabin's air thickened with an awful tension, each breath he took heavy, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Adrenaline raced through him, urging him to flee, but where would he go? Back to the shadows? Suddenly, the candle flickered violently, throwing shadows into wild, chaotic dances. Outside, the wind howled like a banshee, a prelude to the chaos about to ensue. Jake backed away from the mirror, his eyes locked on the door. He had to make a choice. Would he confront whatever was lurking in the dark? Or would he remain hidden within the deceptive safety of the cabin? As the whispers swelled to a crescendo, he felt the shadows coiling behind him, thick and palpable. The laughter returned, mocking and cruel. In a moment of clarity, he realized the truth: he was not alone, he never had been. "Will you join us?" They hissed like 1,000 rusted chains clanking together. With every heartbeat, Jake understood that stepping outside might open the door to the darkness, but staying could bind him to it forever. In that suffocating moment, he took one last look at the door and made his choice: what would Jake sacrifice for freedom, and would the darkness allow him to escape? The sudden crash of the cabin window splintered his thoughts, scattering his resolve like the broken glass. Its coming, and all that remained was the sound of laughter swirling in the night, heavy and suffocating. What did he truly fear more, the outside world or the hell waiting within? The cabin door shuddered under the impact of whatever lurked just outside. Jake's heart thundered in his chest as he forced himself to take a step back from the chaos, but the movement felt futile. The walls squeezed inward, closing around him like the grip of a vice, and his breath turned shallow, every inhale an effort against the weight of dread pounding at him. He turned, scanning the cramped space for refuge, searching for an escape route that didn't lead him back into the wild pitch of night. The mirror was no longer just a glass, it was a portal, its surface swirling, drawing him closer, taunting him with glimpses of the faces he'd seen before. They were back, but this time, their desperation melded with a new urgency, a twisted plea. "Let us out," they cried, their voices rasping like dry leaves skittering on asphalt. "You can't stay here." "No." Jake shouted, desperation twisting into anger. "I'm not helping you." The plea morphed into eerie laughter, an avalanche of sound that rattled the very foundations of the cabin. The shadows grew thicker, darker, and from the corner of his eye, he caught movement, a figure darting between the walls, as ephemeral as smoke. Panic clawed at his throat. He spun around, facing the door as it creaked open slowly, driven by an unseen force. A chill swept through the room, igniting every nerve in his body. Did he dare to look at whatever was stepping through the opening? "Help us," came the voice again, this time deeper, resonating within him. It was a sound shrouded in longing, and a part of Jake wanted to succumb to it, to throw himself into the void and forget the fear, but he bit down on that urge. Fear was his only ally now. With sudden clarity, Jake darted toward the table where the candle sputtered weakly. He grabbed it, the wax still warm beneath his fingers, and turned to face the murmuring shadows. Its flickering light gave him courage, even as the laughter of the lost souls echoed cruelly around him. "Stay back." he yelled, thrusting the candle into the gloom. The darkness recoiled momentarily, but then it surged forward, an avalanche of despair and chaos. Jake stumbled backward, crashing into the cabinet behind him, sending a burst of cold air through the open door. He cast one desperate glance over his shoulder. Beyond the door, the void loomed, pulsing with a life of its own. What was out there? Was it the true vengeful spirits, or something infinitely more sinister? Just then, a sudden wind howled through the open door, extinguishing the candle's flame. Darkness swarmed, swallowing him whole. He felt a pull, an irresistible tightening around his chest like a noose. Jake! A voice sharper now, piercing through the gloom. His name echoed around him, it felt familiar and wrong all at once. As the shadows consumed him, he found himself lost in a sea of whispers, the faces swirling, beckoning him, tugging at his sanity. He was sinking. Darkness clawed at his mind, and for the briefest moment, he felt the weight of their despair, a moment of kinship with the damned. But then he heard another sound, a growl low and menacing, shattering his moment of bonding. With sheer will, Jake fought against the engulfing shadows. He had to make it out. The cabin shook as though it were alive, walls convulsing. He faced the door, heart racing, beneath it all the certainty that whatever lingered outside wanted him inside. He had to escape it. Let go! He screamed, swinging his fists in blind panic, but the shadows roared in defiance, clutching at him tighter, filthy hands of the lost souls pulling him in, seeking to entwine him in their eternal rage. As Jake struggled, he glimpsed a path glimmering with a strange light drawing him forward. It pulsated with both hope and horror. Could he escape the horrors of the cabin and the vengeful spirits? With one last surge of adrenaline, he leapt towards the door, ready to embrace whatever awaited him outside, but would it truly be freedom or a new nightmare? Help us, the chorus sang, a final seductive plea that echoed in his bones. And as he flung himself into the abyss beyond, Jake screamed, the darkness swallowing him whole. What awaited Jake in the unknown? Would the horrors of the cabin follow him into the night, or would he find salvation hidden in the very shadows that sought to consume him? Jake felt a jolt as he burst through the threshold, and the icy night air hit him like a slap. He stumbled forward, the cabin's shadows clawing at his back, pulling him with desperate fingers. He didn't stop. He couldn't stop. The woods loomed around him, ancient and thick, their branches reaching out like the twisted hands of the restless dead. The moon hung overhead, a thin crescent that gave off just enough light to see but not enough to offer comfort. The trees whispered, their leaves murmuring secrets that sent chills skittering down his spine. He glanced back at the cabin. It was there, still alive, with the door gaping open like a dark mouth. The laughter, that terrible sound, still echoed in his ears, mingling with the cries of those trapped within. Jake clutched his head, trying to block them out. He couldn't let himself think about it. He had to move. The ground was uneven beneath his feet, roots and stones threatening to trip him with every step. Panic surged as he glanced deeper into the woods, shadows dancing between the trees, as if they were alive. He could feel the darkness chasing him, an insatiable hunger that craved his fear. Just keep going, he muttered to himself, forcing the words out through trembling lips, but then he stopped. Something shimmered in the moonlight beneath an overhanging branch, a glint of metal. Curiosity surged despite the terror gripping him. He edged closer and bent down, his heart racing as he tugged at it, revealing an old, rusted lantern. A thrill coursed through him. It was something. He needed something against the dark. He fumbled to light it, shaking hands igniting the wick. A feeble glow erupted, illuminating the space around him. The lantern flickered rhythmically like a heartbeat, providing reassurance that he wasn't yet lost to the void. But then the air shifted. The whispers grew louder, piercing the stillness of the night. We see you. Jake spun towards the sound, light shaking in his grasp. The shadows thickened, curling towards him like hungry serpents. They twisted and writhed, forming shapes that danced in patterns he couldn't comprehend. Get away! He shouted, backing up against the rough bark of a massive tree. The lantern's light pulsed, flickering in rhythm with his heart, but the shadows only lunged closer, their frantic energy begging him to succumb. The voices merged into a singular growl, "You've let them out. You belong with us." He felt the weight of the words pressing in on him, pulling him down. He couldn't breathe. "No." He gasped, shaking his head vehemently. "I'm not like you." In that moment of defiance, a sharp branch cracked beneath his boot, echoing in the tension-filled air. The shadows recoiled momentarily, and he seized his chance. He charged forward, lantern held high like a shield, terrified yet determined to escape the encroaching darkness. The trees twisted and turned, creating a maze, their gnarled branches forming walls that closed in around him. As he sprinted deeper into the wilderness, he felt as if the very forest itself conspired against him, intent on trapping him in its haunted embrace. Suddenly, an overwhelming sense of dread washed over him, and a vision struck, figures lurking just beyond the trees, hollow eyes glowing like embers. The lost souls echoed in unison, "You cannot outrun your fate." Jake stopped dead, the lantern's light illuminating the space just ahead. A wooden signpost stood crookedly, the faint words carved in weathered wood reading, "Caution, abandoned highway." What? He breathed. Desperation clawed at his chest. This couldn't be the end. Turning, he risked a glance behind him. The figures were closer now, reaching out with grasping hands, the weight of their energy almost tangible. Their faces twisted in anguish, drawing near, begging him to join the endless cycle of despair. Jake stood at the fork in the road, heart racing. The path split, one way offered a jagged trail deeper into the unknown, and the other a narrow, overgrown pathway leading to the unknown highway, which would lead him to freedom. Which would seal his fate? In that moment, with shadows closing in and voices rising in chaos, he had to choose. The choice was clearer now, but the path ahead concealed mysteries of its own. Would he face the dreaded unknown or succumb to the relentless hunger of the damned souls? Jake took a deep breath, adrenaline coursing through his veins. With sheer determination, he made his decision. But as he stepped forward, a chilling whisper slithered through the trees, wrapping around him like a shroud. You will regret this. What horrors awaited him on the path he chose? Would he find a way out, or sink deeper into the hidden terrors of the haunted highway? Jake gritted his teeth, forcing himself to move down the narrow pathway. Each step felt like wading through a nightmare, the shadows wrapping tighter around him like a noose. The whispered taunts fell quieter behind him, but the raw, pulsating dread remained a living thing gnawing at his sanity. The lantern flickered, casting grotesque shapes that danced along the gnarled roots and uneven stones. Every rustle in the underbrush set his nerves ablaze, heart thundering with the fear that something unseen was hunting him, stalking him in the dark. Just keep going, he repeated, the phrase becoming a desperate chant to keep at bay the gnawing thought that he might not survive the night. As he ventured deeper, the air grew thick with a damp chill, and the faint scent of decay lingered in the breeze. Jake's instincts screamed for him to turn back, but the path behind was as twisted and foreboding as what lay ahead. Suddenly, the lantern's light flickered ominously, then extinguished. Darkness rushed in like a suffocating blanket. Panic clawed at his throat. He scrambled to reignite the wick, fiddling with the mechanism in trembling hands. The matches, once so reassuring, felt worthless in this consuming void. Come on please, he whispered fiercely, frantically striking match after match. Each flame burst to life, only to fizzle and die. Just as despair began to root itself in his mind, a final match sparked and held a feeble flame, igniting the wick once more. Light, dim but steady, returned to him, pushing back the dark like a fragile barrier. But the whispering returned, softer yet more insistent. You've chosen wrong, Jake. He pressed forward, adrenaline now mixed with another flavor, something unnameable, cold, and sick in his gut. Shadows seemed to shift and ripple against the trees, forming faces that bore expressions of torment and rage. Get out! He yelled, his voice strained, fighting against the echoes of his own fear. The sounds of laughter drifted through the air, hair-raising and wrong, filling his ears with the mocking songs of those who had come before him. Shapes swirled around him now, phantoms of anguish stretching their empty hands out in supplication or accusation. He could taste their despair like iron on his tongue. This is a warning, Jake." A voice suddenly screamed from the depths of the night, raw and unbearable. "We've all made these choices, and we never leave." Jake stumbled forward, gasping. Was that pain or madness? What was real anymore? The ground leveled off suddenly, the path opened into a clearing, but it felt wrong, an empty void surrounded by thick trees that leaned in as if they wished him harm. In the center stood an old, broken-down truck, rusted and clawed by time. The cab was gaping, its windshield cracked and clouded. It beckoned to him a promise of escape or a gateway into something worse. He hesitated. Remembering those hollow eyes, he wondered how many had clung to hope only to be devoured by the night. In that moment, the lantern flared brighter, illuminating the grove around him, and he noticed the ground was littered with old personal belongings, men's boots, tattered shirts, even a child's toy, fragments of lives that had vanished, consumed by the shadows. Jake's heart raced. He would have to decide again: approach the truck and risk whatever lay ahead, or retreat into the darkness where the mocking laughter awaited him. But even as he pondered, the shadows stirred again, coalescing, forming a figure, a woman, her face twisted in sorrow but her eyes pulsing with a fierce light. Help us, she pleaded, reaching between the trees, but the moment hung with a heaviness, a warning not to trust the illusions of the forest. Jake felt a chill crawl up his spine. Was she another prisoner of this place, or something darker? With fear clawing at his throat, he took a step toward the truck, determination fueling his raw terror. What awaited him inside? Freedom or the final shackle of despair? As the woman's form flickered in and out of focus, her voice trailing in an eerie wail, Jake braced himself. For what lay ahead? Help us, she cried once more, echoing in his ears as he approached. A decision loomed before him, darker than any shadow, and he could almost taste the fear on his tongue. What awaited him in that cursed truck? Would he escape the horrors of the haunted highway, or would he become just another name lost to the night? Jake clenched his fists, the subtle vibrations of the ground urging him to move quickly. The woman's spectral form lingered, flickering like a dying fire. You can't help them, he yelled, doubt gnawing at him. You're just a part of this nightmare. Her smile twisted, transforming into a grimace. The shadows behind her slithered like serpents, sharing her despair. Each whisper carried a weight, pulling at the edges of his sanity. The laughter grew louder, echoing from unseen depths. It seemed to mock his struggle, pushing him toward that rusted truck. You must choose, Jake. The woman screamed, desperation forcing the words out like shards of glass. You must choose before it's too late. With every second that passed, the decision gnawed at him. If he was going to be trapped forever, maybe he could still save someone in the process. He took another step toward the truck, its rusted frame beckoning with an inexplicable allure. The truck's door hung ajar, creaking, like the whispers that drifted around him. Something inside stirred. Heart pounding, he glanced back at the woman. Will you come with me? He asked, though he already knew the answer. She was tethered to this place, just as he could become. Go. She cried, hands stretching toward him, as if to pull him back. Leave now, Jake. You'll regret it. Ignoring the warning, he approached the truck, reaching out to the handle. It felt cold, biting against his skin. Every instinct screamed for him to turn around, to flee back down the path. But the temptation to uncover whatever secrets lay inside was too strong. No sooner had he swung the door wide than the stench hit him, a vile concoction of rot and despair. Inside, the faint flicker of the lantern illuminated remnants of a past life, a crumpled map splotched with grease, scattered photographs of faces twisted in fear, and a tattered teddy bear, threadbare and eerily familiar. He stumbled back, heart racing wildly. The truck was a graveyard of lost hopes. This is what becomes of those who step into the dark. Echoed the woman's voice, nearly drowned out by the growing laughter around him. Just then, the shadows surged forward, billowing as if alive. He was engulfed, visions flashing before his eyes, scenes of despair, drivers lost in the darkness, searching hopelessly for escape. Each face cried out for help, each one pleading with him. Jake, a voice drifted from the shadows. It was low and reverberating, familiar yet tainted. Jake, are you going to turn your back on your own blood? His heart seized. He peered into the shadows, fear gripping him like a vice. There, amid the shifting darkness, a figure emerged, his brother, long thought lost to the night, his face a mask of anguish. You have to run, it's a trap. Why? How are you here? Jake asked, driven to the brink of madness by the impossible sight. They want you. His brother cried, his voice raw, torn. You can't stay. You can't rescue anyone. The panic surged in Jake's chest, and he turned to flee. But the darkness coiled tighter, a serpent ready to strike. The ground shook beneath him, twisting the world into a kaleidoscope of fear. Suddenly, a hand shot out from the shadows, clasping around his wrist, cold as ice, yet gripping fiercely. Whirling around, he found himself face to face with a dozen haunting eyes, all filled with the same desperate longing. Help us, they all chorused. We are the lost, just like you. Trapped in their gaze, Jake felt his resolve weaken. Would he join them or break free? The choice hung heavy in his throat, the weight of their hopes pressing down. He glanced back at the truck, knowing the decision loomed like a guillotine ready to fall. Would he save himself or become yet another victim of the haunted highway? The shadows pulsed with anticipation, closing in, and he could feel the darkness tightening its grip. Was freedom within reach, or would he drown in the cries of the lost? With a breath held tight, Jake teetered on the brink of fate, desperately scanning the crowd of tortured souls, hoping for a way out, terrified of what loomed ahead. What would Jake choose? Would he turn his back on the past, or step into the depths of darkness and become one with those who had succumbed? Jake's heart raced like a freight train as the shadows tightened their grip, suffocating his vision with their despair. He glanced at his brother, who stood before him, a flickering specter of the love he had lost. The familiar warmth of kinship clashed against the icy reality of the haunted highway. I can't leave you. He gasped, hope teetering on the edge of oblivion. You have to. You must escape. His brother's eyes burned with urgency. They'll take you too. There's no saving me. The panic clawed deeper, twisting inside him. The shadows behind his brother reached out, wrapping around his feet like chains. They yearned for Jake, pulling him into their warped embrace, whispering sweet nothings of eternal rest and belonging. But behind the cacophony of despair, another voice emerged, a soft, desperate murmur. Jake, please, you have to choose light. You can't give in. It was the woman from the shadows, her face etched into memory. In that moment, a flicker of resolve ignited. He was reminded of the family waiting for him back home. With a surge of defiance, Jake pushed through the weight of despair. No. He shouted, shoving the darkness away. I want to join you. I will find my way back. The haunting voices trembled in response, twisting and merging into a cacophony of howls that echoed of his every fear. You can't escape. They cried, but the shadows were not impenetrable. They flickered along with his heartbeat, an echo of his defiance. Taking a deep breath, Jake pivoted on his heels and sprinted towards the encroaching light of the overgrown path, the remnants of the only truth he had left. He ran, tripping over roots, his heart pounding fiercely as his lantern flickered precariously beside him, illuminating the way. Help us! Echoed behind him, but Jake refused to look back. The weight of his brother's eyes, once filled with warmth, had turned into an anchor, dragging him into depths of despair he couldn't afford. With every frantic step, he felt the shadows retreat, their whispers growing fainter as he pressed forward. The darkness clawed at him, desperate to reclaim its prize, but he found strength in the waves of his memories, his children's laughter, his wife's warm embrace. The path twisted and turned, but the light ahead grew brighter, more tangible. Jake surged forward, limbs burning with effort. I'm coming home. He shouted, voice raw. With adrenaline propelling him, he broke free from the woods and stumbled onto a road illuminated by dull headlights. Freedom lay ahead, but as soon as he reached the asphalt, a shadowy figure flickered into view, blocking his escape. It was the woman again, lost, yet somehow more substantial than before. "You can't leave. We are bound to this place," she hissed, agitation coating her words with venom. "I want to let you take me," Jake shouted, fear pooling in his chest, legs trembling as he kept his distance. The truck loomed nearby, rusted and rotting, yet it called to him with despair. "Help us!" echoed again, sharper, feverish, a plea that gnawed at Jake's sanity. Sweat trickled down his brow as he faced the spectral figures lingering behind her. But fueled by the memories of his loved ones, he pressed on, the shadows losing their grip. "I choose life," he declared, forcing every ounce of conviction into those words, and with that proclamation, the twisted figures roared in frustration. The shadows recoiled, shrieking in a cacophony that reverberated through the night. Jake's legs propelled him forward, leaving the voices and their haunting wails behind. He broke into the urgency of silence, his breath hitching in his throat. The road welcomed him, a glowing ribbon under the moonlight, leading back home. Relief surged through his veins as he reached a pair of headlights cutting through the darkness. "Stop!" he waved frantically, heart hammering. The truck slowed, and the driver's face materialized through the window, a kindly stranger. As the man opened the door, warmth flooded over Jake. "Where are you coming from?" the man asked, concern heavy in his tone. "It's coming for me," Jake panted, rushing into the truck, the shadows receding behind him like the tide. "Hey, you're safe now," the driver reassured. With each passing second, the suffocating weight of fear lifted like fog. The engine rumbled, propelling them forward, leaving the haunted highway and its terrors behind. Jake stared out into the rearview mirror, watching as the darkness dissipated, defeated for now. "I'm coming home," he murmured, tears spilling down his cheeks. As the headlights illuminated familiar streets, the silhouette of his house emerged against the night sky. Relief washed over him like warm rain. "You made it," he whispered to himself, a sweet realization blooming in his chest. They arrived, and with trembling hands, he opened the door, scrambling inside. The warm laughter of his children echoed around him, wrapping him in a cocoon of love that erased every shadow. He scooped them into his arms, feeling their heat pulsing against his heart. The terrors of the road faded into distant memory. Jake had faced darkness and had emerged on the other side, his spirit unbroken. He glanced over at his wife, her gentle smile soothing the ache that had settled in his heart. Together, they were whole, together, they were home. But as the night wore on, Jake sensed the lingering shadows. The whispers hadn't vanished, they hovered at the edges of his mind, solemn reminders that battles were won but never over. And in the quiet hum of the night, he made a promise to always protect his family, to keep the darkness at bay. Jake wouldn't let the past pull him back, not ever again. But even in the safety of his home, he understood, the horrors of the haunted highways would always be out there, waiting for the next traveler lost in the night. Now that you've reached this conclusion, make sure to act. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that dive into the unknown. It's the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and make sure more people see this epic journey. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. We want to hear what you think, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Your support keeps the stories flowing.